Our first speaker is Stefan Kur. Did I say that right?
Sounds good.
Kur. I just added like French to it for some reason.
That's European too. I'll take that.
Okay. So Stefan is a founder and a CEO of Santa Rosa-based Textiles Inc., a benefit corporation and certified green business dedicated to bringing back more textile and sewing jobs to the North Bay and making the industry overall more sustainable. Under the product brand Sonoma USA, Textiles helps local businesses identify valuable and reusable materials in their waste stream and upcycles them into unique and meaningful products. Stefan is originally from Germany, but has been living in the Bay Area for 13 years and has spent almost a decade working in the local sewing industry. When he's not busy digging around through other people's trash, you'll most likely find him on the tennis court or out and about with his 3 kids. And with that, I give you Stefan.
Change the slides here.
Where did our clicker go? Oh, there we go. You right click.
Right. All right, here we go. I know it's after lunch and we're probably all suffering through the post-food coma. Gonna try not to make it death by PowerPoint and keep it entertaining, but I do have a bunch of slides, but I hope it's fun. Textiles is a pretty new company. I only founded this business back in 2015, but I took over my in-laws' cutting and sewing facility, which has been around for over 28 years in Santa Rosa. So, you know, although the company is new, all the guys have been working with us, have been with us between, 15 and 20 years. So we have a good bunch of knowledgeable people there. We're a legal benefit corporation, we're certified green business. We have about 20,000 square foot production and warehouse facility in Santa Rosa. And we do a lot of our own brand work, but also contract sewing for a wide range of different brands and products. Our mission is to really try and strengthen the apparel and textile industry back here in the North Bay. I mean, the Bay Area used to be the hub for apparel, textile, and fashion before things moved to LA or overseas. And we want to basically not just be a cut and sew provider, but we want to become an enabler that allows small brands, designers, but also our own brands to move more towards a demand-based, purchase-activated manufacturing, bringing together new technology, like digital printing and process management and combine it with traditional sewing skills. Okay, I guess the animation doesn't work here, so no worries. So Textiles is not just our legal name, it's also our service brand. We're basically an enabler for different brands and contract sewing customers. We provide everything from digital printing, on-demand, garment decoration, from direct-to-garment printing, heat pressing, screen printing. We're working on adding dye sublimation to that as well. Cutting, sewing, and we build custom online stores for customers. We do the fulfillment and warehousing for many of our customers' products. So pretty much trying to cover the whole value chain for different companies we work with. BPE USA is the original brand, the original business my in-laws started with over 28 years ago, and they were very focused on manufacturing highest quality protective gear. They were originally making stuff for Rector Sports, a skateboard brand, like wrist guards and knee pads and elbow pads. And based on the products they were making for them, the military approached them back in '98. And they ended up developing the military specification for knee and elbow pads. So over the last 17, 18 years, we've made close to 6 million pairs of knee and elbow pads right here in Santa Rosa for the US Army and the Marine Corps. So pretty much everybody who's gone through the military over the years received our protective gear as part of their first issue when they got their uniforms. So not many people know things like that happen in the back roads of Santa Rosa. So that's still a big part of our business, that protective gear brand. We're trying to branch out more into the work safety gear market. We're in about 20, 30 Ace Hardware stores, lumber stores, trying to bring more, locally made product into those markets. And then last but not least, Sonoma USA is a brand I started back in 2016. After working for more like 10 years in the sewing industry and textile industry, seeing how much overstock, scrap, and extra fabric was accumulated, I figured I got to do something with it. I've been hoarding material under my cutting table and in the big warehouse space we have. So I figured there's got to be a better thing to do with all this stuff. And then looking out how many companies have stuff sitting around, whether it's banners, billboards, fire hose. So we started a business out of that. I'm probably going to skip through the challenges. We've heard a lot about the clothing and textile industry's challenges. It's definitely more of a linear model right now, producing something and throwing it away, working on making it more circular, but we're not there yet, I think, for the majority of items. We've heard how much stuff is sitting on racks in warehouses, and I think H&M had that crazy number of garments they had sitting in overstock that they were burning or getting rid of. I think it was a big report about Burberry too. I mean, almost every big brand that's stuck in that fast fashion cycle has stuff sitting around that they can't sell before the next batch of stuff comes in. So I think it's a ginormous waste to shred all this material. And, textile and apparel is one aspect, but there's a lot of other materials that we're going to focus on a little more in this presentation. In the US, we're definitely living in a single-use throwaway society. We produce, 30% of the world's garbage, but only make up 5% of the world's population, which is a very crazy ratio. For a kid's presentation that I did at a school, I added the little whale because, the numbers are crazy to understand for kids, but then I figured 1.2 million big whales. Maybe that's a little, they can imagine that a little better, but it's an insane number. And I don't know if you're familiar with the One Planet Living concepts, but if everybody lived the way Northern Americans do, we would need 5 planets to sustain that lifestyle. For now, we have 1, so I think it's time to rethink waste and how we treat used materials. So Sonoma USA was founded in 2016 with a Kickstarter campaign. We figured there's a lot of valuable materials out there that took a lot of resources to make in the first place, and they're still very durable, although they finished maybe their original purpose of their existence, whether that's decommissioned fire hose, used banners and billboards, coffee bean bags from all the coffee and chocolate makers we have in the Bay Area, truck tarps, decommissioned uniforms, overstock fabrics, just, roll ends from productions. There's just an endless amount of stuff sitting around. So we started, diverting some of these from partners, mainly in the Bay Area, but also big companies we're talking to right now in the tech industry. We partner with the Moscone Center to, work on all the big trade shows they're hosting. We just picked up 3,500 pounds of signage and banners from the Oracle Open World Show. We're now working with Oracle to try and upcycle all that stuff into merchandise for the next next show. Sonoma Raceway is one of our big suppliers. This laptop bag was made from, I think it's an Outback Steakhouse banner from Sonoma Raceway. SWANA, Solid Waste Association North America, for the 3rd year in a row now, we've made all their merchandise and swag that they give away to their association members and employees, made from the signage from the last year, from all their shows and conferences. So there's a lot of cool brands and cities that we partner with, City of Santa Rosa, City of Novato, for all the signage they have up and down their main streets. So we're trying to create that whole, idea of finding alternative solutions for those materials. So we design unique and purposeful new products in our facility. Most of the stuff doesn't take much cleaning. We can wipe it down with, we use some water diluted with some orange-based liquid, cleaning liquid. And then we deliver meaningful new corporate gifts and merchandise. So we're trying to work with the companies that we pick up material from to also get them to commit to, instead of ordering more Chinese-made, cheap, decorated merchandise junk, to really, take the materials you've already paid for. You paid thousands of dollars for those banners. They speak your brand language. it's your marketing message. Take those and turn them into a meaningful gift for your employees, for your customers, for your business partners. I just read a report about corporate gifting. People want products that actually tell a story, that are more personal. It's not just another swag item that has a corporate logo on it and everybody gets the same thing, like the 50th t-shirt of whatever it is, or pencil or pen. So, turning some of these products into, something that shares your brand story and your brand values, I think is something powerful. These are, for example, grain bags from Alvarado Street Bakery. It's like every week they go through 100 of these gigantic bags that carry about 2,000 pounds of wheat berries. And they're pretty much in pristine condition by the time we get them. And they upcycle really nicely into durable duffel bags, tote bags. They're water repellent, they're UV resistant. It's an awesome material. And they had to actually get an extra dumpster to just throw this stuff away every week because they have nothing else to do with it. La Tavola in Napa, one of the biggest linen rental and linen tablecloth rental companies. It's like 2 or 3 times a year I rent a 26-foot U-Haul truck and fill it to the rim with fabrics. Every tablecloth that has a little stain or a hole from a cigarette can't be rented out anymore. It's ginormous amounts of awesome fabrics, beautiful fabrics. So we turn them into tote bags for, speaker bags and other events. But we also open a little retail store in our factory where we sell those fabrics, to the crafts market, at a obviously much better rate than what you would find at Joann's, and, small amounts, different fabrics. So it's really, it's an amazing, it's like a treasure trove of materials that we pick up from those guys. Scrap leather is another thing we turn into coasters, keychains, wine carriers, bracelets. There's an endless amount of things we can make from all these different materials. And as I said, in April, we opened a little store on site, so it's still, we haven't communicated it much, but we already have like a trusted following from all the local makers and schools and crafts folks who are interested in buying zippers, webbing, you name it, notions and stuff that we have sitting in the factory. One of our big things that we're trying to do is move away from all the pre-making of stuff and the inventory issue that, not just we, but many industries face. And a big part of that is combining all the cool technology that's out there, from digitizing patterns, customizing product, using something like the I don't know if you heard of the magic mirrors that basically project clothing in different colors onto on your image in the mirror, and enabling stores to say, okay, we don't have to stock every item in every size and every potential color, but work off a smaller showcase environment where you can show certain products and styles, but then offer digital customization and ordering, and then made to order. So moving away from gigantic warehousing of stuff, and also for the merchandise market, building a virtual closet. We started partnering with schools, with sports teams, and they all have the same issue. Merchandise is not their key business. They're tired of ordering like 100 t-shirts all with the same screen print just because they have to order that minimum. Then you don't know, are the sizes right, is the color, the style, are people going to buy it? And you sit on the stuff, you have to manage it. Nobody's really getting paid in schools to manage the inventory and know what's around and try to sell it. So we started building, a virtual inventory of products that only get made once somebody orders it. So you can be creative. You can say, I want this t-shirt with that logo. I want this bag and that bag. Because it's online, there's no risk. Nobody has to put up tons of money up front to order it, and it's only made and shipped to order. And that's been a big extension to our business. It's the whole corporate swag market it's a gigantic industry every year, and we found there's like a niche market. There's something in between the big universities that are decked out with professional, large-scale companies that produce their merchandise, and smaller entities that really want to offer merchandise, but don't want to spend the money up front, don't know what to get, and don't want to deal with the whole process of fulfillment. So for those entities, we partner with different companies. In the apparel industry, we try to work with the good brands, the companies that do ethical work, that source good products, and put those apparel items into the stores, but we can also combine it with our own silhouettes, our own products that we produce. And Clover is a great example. We're currently working with those guys on upcycling some of their big billboards that they have along 101 into tote bags. But they also want a merchandise store, so they want to be able to utilize some of the cool Clover images and cartoon figures that they have to put on some apparel and see if kids want to wear that and if they like that. At the same time, every year they give $100 to each employee, and they have 200 employees. So rather than ordering something for each of this employee, now they can go to a store, online store, and get whatever they want in the size and color and style they want. So it's a different approach, and so this is for us a great customer example where we combine taking their used materials like billboards and banners. Last year we made 250 picnic bags for them from one of their billboards for their employee picnic. They filled it with some other sustainable items. And it was fun because all the employees had this billboard, and the bags had a little tag sewn to it that showed the full picture of the billboard, so they knew what it was made from. And so they were all trying to puzzle back together who got a piece of Clo the cow and where. So it's much more meaningful, and all these bags are still running around, and people tell the story every time somebody says, "Hey, what's this and where's that?" So that's the whole idea of a more meaningful gift approach, than the standard merchandise. And last but not least, education is a big part for us. I've been working with different elementary schools, Sonoma Valley High School and Sonoma State, to go in and talk to different age groups about building a sustainable business, being a benefit corporation, upcycling, getting kids introduced to that, at a very early age, and getting them out to making stuff, understanding how products are made, what the whole life cycle of materials is. We've done this with elementary school in Kotati for 3 years now. I go in, talk about upcycling, show them some of the banners and bags we make, and then they come out to our factory, do a factory tour, see how the whole process works from collecting material, cleaning, cutting, sewing, and then they take home a bunch of different materials, and then they have 3 weeks to start a business, and they're 6 years old. And then they invite us, me and the parents, and present the results at school in the gymnasium, and it's amazing what those kids come up with. They film an infomercial, they make products, they create business cards, everybody's CEO. But it's, I think that it's important that we do this from a young age, get these kids into the right mindset. And I've been trying to, at the university level and high school level, I think the curriculum needs to change. This, business as a force for good, that should be the default we're teaching, not the C Corp, the old school, is for making money and the shareholders are your only responsibility. I think this is not the right approach. I mean, for those kids, the default we teach is business is to do good. And and if you do, and you take care of all your stakeholders, you'll also be profitable and make money in the end. But this is not the only goal when starting a business. So, and I think that's where we are. Thank you.
Thank you so much. A really interesting presentation. I really appreciate that. So our next speaker is Isaac Nicholson, a creative leader and entrepreneur with 25 years of apparel industry experience. Isaac is known for propelling cutting-edge product and market innovation in the realms of sustainability and circular resource efficiency. He has built and led several brands and manufacturers to industry-wide notoriety. He's been focused on propelling cutting-edge sustainability through his work in fashion for more than 20 years. In 2007, California Apparel News dubbed Nicholson Eco Johnny Appleseed. Okay. Due to his growing reputation for being a very passionate and committed early-stage promoter of sustainable textiles and fashion, Isaac possesses a comprehensive fashion industry knowledge base extending from the origins of fiber to yarn and textile formation, product M&D, all the way through branding, marketing, and global distribution and leadership of fashion and textile companies. In 2017, Isaac had the honor to be listed as an expert contributor to the Ellen MacArthur Foundation's Circular Fiber Initiative report and is regarded as a thought leader in the realm of circularity and sustainability. So with that, I give you Isaac.
Thank you. Nice to be here. There's some familiar faces in the crowd and a lot of new faces as well. So going to talk about going beyond sustainability with our work. Let's take a look at that here. So we're a material science company based in Los Angeles, California. We have offices in China and in Amsterdam. We were the lucky recipients of the Global Change Award in 2018 for one of our technologies, the AgriLoop, and hopefully we'll have time to get to that one today. So first I want to start with our value system. This is really where we position ourselves personally and as a business. It's at this nexus of a fair, livable, viable world. You know, what a concept. But we've open sourced this, of course, and we invite everybody to position themselves in this way. We produce fiber, yarn, and fabrics with our technologies, and we're proud to say that we're impacting all 17 of the UN SDGs with our technologies. So what we're working to foster is the same move that's already well underway in energy and automotive. We've seen now for more than 20 years the renewable energy sector really starting to take root and grow. EV is clearly a better choice than old school combustion motors, and waste to resource, circularity is the essential change that has to happen in our textile industry. So we've got massive tailwinds right now for this change. Consumers are demanding it. Anybody under 30 years old, if they don't know that this is what's next, they're living in a cave somewhere, and more power to them. But the fashion industry actually has to change to survive right now, and this is something not many people know. But all the CEOs are aware of it, and it's driving really massive sort of athletic level race towards circularity right now. But everybody's trying to figure out really what it is. And the reason for that is resource scarcity is actually driving a very scary future for business, which is a bad indicator for humanity in general. But Boston Consulting Group has studied this extensively, and in 2017 said the case for change is indisputable. And so now we're really starting to see things move finally. So as a result, the big fashion brands, especially fast fashion, has been making some pretty outrageous claims. And we're happy to see that, and we want to help facilitate them reaching these goals. It's so important that they do. But of course, as mentioned earlier, the greater business model needs to be looked at, the overproduction. So we know that the solution is in circularity, to regenerate our precious natural resources, to create the economic abundance that has to continue to support people, and really to foster positive social impact across the boards. We have a really strict innovation criteria to enable that, which is to really only release technologies or products that are massively scalable and cost effective, or it really won't move the needle in this global challenge we're in. So we also don't believe that recycled or organic materials need to be lower quality or somehow lacking in aesthetic value. So we only will produce a product if it's higher quality or higher performing. And I can show you some examples of that after the presentation here. So these are our technology platforms. AgriLoop, where we transform food crop waste, the biomass that's left over in the field, which is about 60% of what's grown at least. We transform that into textile fiber and a host of other industrial co-products, and perfect organic fertilizer to go back to the same farms where we got the biomass. A completely beneficial system. TextLoop is our enabling of circularity as a platform globally in the textile and fashion sector, and Orbital hybrid yarn system is the way we manage shorter and more difficult staple fibers after mechanical recycling, or more coarse vegetal fibers from AgriLoop. It's also the way we control shedding and the release of microfibers or fiber fragments. So today we're going to talk about TextLoop, though, as the core focus, and you're already all aware that the majority of what we're buying is ending up in landfill, a lot of it even in the first year after purchase. So what we're focused on here is enabling the resource efficiency that fashion needs, considering this fact. Here's a quick video that hopefully will play. Oh, it looks like, is this a PDF now? Okay. This will give you a... Okay. So we won't go through the video, but it's a cheeky little video you can find on our website that explains what the platform does, but I'll give you a deeper explanation right now. So with the Text Loop, we have a global system. We're working on 3 continents right now on textile circularity, including with some of the world's biggest brands. I'll wait for the slides to cue me here. Just 1 second. Oh, it's up there. Okay, I can't see it here. Yeah, so we're focused on a methodology we call the lightest touch, and that's really this emphasis on preserving the embedded energy in a textile. So whether that's the dye stuffs or the structure itself, if there's a way to carry that forward into the next life cycle, and Stefan, congratulations, because you're doing it like a master. You know, this is what we need to do. We don't see a lot of purpose in breaking things all the way down to monomers and repolymerizing and extruding. The amount of energy and chemicals and water required to do that generally is more than maybe the original fabric took to produce. So we need to take a look at some of these chemical recycling concepts. But what we like to do is mechanically recycle textiles and work on preserving as much value as possible. That's really the critical factor. So we're going after post-industrial, pre-consumer, and post-consumer waste. And so to define that for you guys, because a lot of people lump textile waste just into 2 categories, post-industrial is all of the waste that comes out of the manufacture of clothing. Pre-consumer is things like overstock or seconds or rejects or all of these web returns that are stacking up by the millions of units in every brand's warehouse at this point. It's crazy. And post-consumer is pretty understandable. That's our stuff after we've used it. So actively working on 3 continents, as I've said, and really we are connecting those dots that were talked about earlier. We don't own a single facility yet for the recycling or the yarn spinning, but we connect the world's best recyclers to the brands or communities that need recycling. And then we know the best practices for taking the resulting fibers into highest value applications. And it's that service that's creating a pretty robust business right now. We are working with some pretty major brands and already selling our recycled cotton products into pretty high-level programs. You're gonna start to see this in market in a big way starting in 2020. And right around Earth Day 2021, you'll be able to go get some Chuck Taylors that are actually a combination of our upcycled biomass from the AgriLoop and textile waste. And that'll be pretty exciting. We've got some prototypes of that already that I'm resisting wearing myself personally. And here's an example of one of the products that's already in market with Converse. This is a 50% organic, 50% recycled cotton t-shirt that's up on the website now. This is just like any classic cotton tee. It is just significantly lower impact and made of 50% waste. So here's what the process looks like, and hopefully you can see it well enough back there. It was animated in this really fun way, but this is a little bit small, so I'm just gonna take you through it more visually with a case study. And this is around pre-consumer recycling, actually. So last year with Universal Music, who throws away upwards of 300,000+ t-shirts and hoodies a year because they have trademark graphics on them and they haven't sold. And if they put them even into a downstream market, they have to give the artist the royalties for those products. So they've been just throwing them away for the last 25 years, every year. And we thought that was crazy. So we got a big batch of this stuff and did a beautiful pilot this last year. And hopefully that will lead to ongoing work with these guys. But what we did is, first we received and classified their waste stream. It was almost all 100% cotton and almost all black. And that made it super easy as a case study here. There were very few blends, although we do manage blends, and I can tell you a little bit more about that. And this was definitely in that pre-consumer category. This was a warehouse full of stuff destined for landfill. First, we sorted those items. We worked with some disadvantaged workers in a secure location to remove the trademark graphics and document that so that it was fully transparent for Universal and the artists. This was not going downstream. We removed all the labels, cut out those graphics, and made sure that it was ready to go directly into recycling. So that's that pre-processing step. Then we did the mechanical recycling. And this idea of shredding textiles, it can either be done where you're really focused just on throughput and speed, or it can be done mindfully to extract the longest fibers possible and retain that embedded energy. And that's what we do. So we got this beautiful fiber, we baled it up and got it over to our yarn spinner, and we produced some nice yarns, 20 singles, if that means anything to anybody, for a nice mid-weight t-shirt, and blended with organic cotton. And I've got an example of this shirt back here. But then it went into knitting, fabric production, and on to cut and sew, and ultimately back into these beautiful concert tees. So this was a really textile to textile, not just textile to textile, but actually t-shirt to t-shirt recycling project, and a great proof of concept. But this is what can be done across the boards with well-organized waste streams. And the well-organized part is super important. This was touched upon earlier. It is the first and biggest difference between high-value and low-value recycling. So we're working on eliminating waste and enabling resource efficiency. Currently, we're in high-level talks with the LA Clean Tech Incubator, and their goal for taking Los Angeles to a zero-waste city one day. We know San Francisco's been moving on this for quite a while. But talking about creating a MRF for textile recycling in Los Angeles, where there's probably upwards of 1,000 tons a day of garment waste going into landfill, getting trucked out to Nevada, in fact, to go into landfill. Just insanity. So if we were to combine that with the resources in the Bay Area, we could create a really robust commercial pilot here, and we have all the technology to do it. And we have all the off-takers to take the resulting yarns and fabrics. So this is something that should happen in near term, and the conversation's well underway. Right now in Asia, we're working on big pilots for some of the worst offenders. We're actively recycling Nike waste right now and focusing on unlocking value from their 60-40 poly-cotton blends, which is the biggest category of materials. We're getting some really beautiful yarns back already, and taking that into the next level of responsible manufacture, applying it to our orbital yarn system, which I'm going to show you right now. So orbital yarns were created to make higher value, higher performing textiles from lower value fibers. We've got this terrible reputation around recycled cotton and recycled textiles in general for poor quality and poor aesthetics. So whether that be weaker yarns that have to be run slower or create a lot of problems with breakage during fabric formation, or neps and pilling, all of these issues have really held back the application of recycled textiles on a global basis. But the other terrible thing resulting from recycled textiles is that when you have these shorter fibers, fiber fragments will naturally fall out of the yarns, out of the textiles easier. And that's tragic, because we've already got a bad enough problem with our virgin textiles putting all of this pollution into our waterways, our air, our oceans. So orbital, it turns out, through the yarn construction, significantly reduces the release of synthetic fiber fragments, and we've just documented this with the Hohenstein Institute in Germany. Near zero polyester release from our 30% poly, 70% organic and recycled cotton yarns. And so these are really high performance yarns that compete actually with some of the brands you know well, like Dry Fit from Nike or Climacool from Adidas. These yarns have incredible moisture management function, that wicking and fast dry icon you see there, on top of being anti-pilling and high strength. And so this is a way that we can take low-value fiber and actually make a product that's better than virgin. So we have some test results here showing the performance of orbital versus the leading performance fabrics. And after 40 washes, Orbital is the clear winner in most categories, ranking really high on the pilling and across the boards. And because we're creating a mechanical wicking and fast dry function with this yarn construction, it doesn't wash out. And that's also great because those finishes are not going into your body that would normally be on the performance activewear. So a really big leap forward with this yarn spinning system combined strategically with our textile recycling know-how. When we get more beautiful, longer fibers out of really nice cotton textiles, we'll put that into a traditional yarn spinning system like the ring spun system, which is perfect when all you're dealing with is nice cotton. The potential loss of some fiber there is not going to be as tragic as synthetics, and the hand feel everything 100% natural, beautiful. But when we have these shorter staple fibers, Orbital is an amazing solution. If we have a couple more minutes, I can tell people about the AgriLoop. 30 seconds? Okay, the AgriLoop, a closed-loop biorefinery, a regenerative industrial system for processing biomass, handling what would normally be all climate and human health impact through the burning or rotting of food crops globally. When we shift our perspective and look at this biomass as an abundant raw material, we find that it's actually 5 times the current global fiber demand all in, including industrial fabrics, nonwovens, agri-textiles, just from these feedstocks alone. So there's this huge opportunity to unlock the natural fiber that we need in the world without having to grow purpose-grown fiber crops like cotton as our only natural fiber resource. It's a big, big change. The reason that this is a circular and regenerative technology is that not only are we producing this biofiber from crop waste, creating jobs and income for the local community, drawing down carbon by preventing it from going up in the atmosphere and productizing it. I'm actually wearing a blazer from oilseed hemp, Canadian oilseed hemp right now that we processed in our pilot. What it's really doing is utilizing the waste to power the mill and to provide the biochemistry we need to upgrade the fiber. And in doing so, it's really just biomimicry. It works like a giant mechanical sheep, right? So when we're done, the only effluents that are left are perfect organic fertilizer. So it's a very elegant systems design, just like a sheep, it's consuming the biomass. There's some mechanical pre-processing that would be akin to the teeth and chewing it up. Goes into the wet processing, which is down there in the stomach. Energy and biochemicals are created. It grows fiber, and it poops in the end and fertilizes the field. So this is exactly what the AgriLoop does. So this is what we got the Global Change Award for. It's hitting all categories of textile application, touching all 17 of the UN SDGs, a global game changer, a carbon drawdown machine, and we're going to bring it to California by the end of 2021. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Isaac. Isaac, thank you. That was a
My
great
pleasure.
presentation. So now it's my pleasure to introduce Nima Pauline. Nima is the founder and CEO of the award-winning Ecoculture Manufacturing, the PS Textile Recapture Program, and
Sustenary Technologies.
I knew I was going to get that wrong. Sustenary Technologies. A portfolio of companies with a social concern. It's located in Southern California in the Palm Springs iHub, with a focus on creating environmental sustainability one thread at a time. With that, I give you Nima.
Right click. Okay. All right. So, good afternoon. So before I begin, I always thank the people and the reasons why I'm here. I want to thank the City of Palm Springs, Coachella Valley iHub, Coachella Valley Economic Partnership for Riverside County, the Governor's Office, Go Biz, CalRecycle, and Bertrand Piccard's World Alliance Solar Impulse Foundation. We would not be here without these stakeholders. And lastly, I want to thank you. Your time is valuable, and I appreciate being able to share my experiences with you. Okay. So my name is Nima Pauline, and I'm founder of Ecoculture Manufacturing, Eco-Sustenary Technologies, and Palm Springs Textile Recapture Program. When we joined the iHub in 2016, we were the 41st startup in Coachella Valley. Today, I'm going to talk about the efforts, challenges, and successes. I'm going to talk about each company and to share with you our efforts, challenges, and successes. So our purpose, I'm sorry, I'm a bad public speaker, so I apologize. Just bear with me. So my purpose was to combine fashion, sustainability, and technology. And by combining fashion, sustainability, and technology, this is what we've created. Inputs, oh, here, pardon me, sorry. I'm all over the board. Okay, here we go. All right, so these are our inputs. Inputs are on the right and analytics are on the bottom right. All inputs are qualified and quantified in the cloud that allows consumers, brands, retailers, government, and academia to access pertinent information. By doing this, it allows a transparency that I believe is vital to a truly sustainable company. On the right-hand side, you can see that the carbon footprint and the way that we quantify each garment or accessory is basically factory emissions, logistics, air travel, employee commutes, textiles, and then of course the carbon offsets, the renewable energy certificates, improved forest management, water restoration, commuter offset bundling, and employee water bundling. And then below we have customer brand profiles, and this is where the customer is able to actually access their information, create an online profile. Brands are able to access the information to see what is moving. They're able to actually follow the customer with brand purchases and promotions, carbon footprint, and carbon offsetting. And then finally, retailer analytics. This is key. So retailers are actually able to access their carbon footprint for each brand and actually access the styles, the seasons, and promotions so they can actually communicate with their consumer. On the left side are the stakeholders. And basically with EcoSustainari technology, it's a cloud. It's a cloud-based system. And the reasons why I created this is I wanted it to be open source for academia and government in particular. So for government, it's the data statistics that are key, carbon tax, grants for economic development, and then regulations. And of course, academia, the white papers, the research, innovation, and science. ECM achieves a sustainable business model by using technology to create environmental sustainability, authentication, and transparency. And here's what the life cycle of an ECM product will encompass. Up top, you can see the manufacturing. So we will do a digital birth certificate that we've actually, the digital birth certificate, we're going to be utilizing blockchain. However, blockchain will be obsolete. It cannot handle quantum mathematics. And when they created it, they did not quantify or calculate to keep up with the global population. So instead of blockchain, we're using Raditech technology. And they're actually in Chico, California. And what this does is it helps authenticate a product. And with authentication, it allows, first of all, the consumer to know it's real. They're able to follow it, to know that the sourcing of the textiles have been done responsibly, the manufacturing, and then of course the waste. So with this process, we're able to also work with risk management and fast pass transportation. So with the technology, it's a hands-off process. You can actually scan a box, you know what's inside of it without having to open it. Digital tracking, the RFID technology. I have a patent, my first patent, basically the goal was to quantify carbon. Again, solar, it's cloud-based. And I'm on my second patent right now. We're utilizing multi-walled nanotubes. So I'm very excited about that. So with this business model, of this circular, you can see the loss prevention, inventory management, and then it gets down into customer purchase, which also extends into in-store technology for inventory management, anti-theft, and enhanced consumer interactions. And then once we get over to the consumer purchase, over to the landfill, so warranty, life cycle management. And the landfill diversion is key. This is where we take our waste back. And we take our waste back and we upcycle it into new products. So the purpose, one of the biggest motivators for me in doing this was to work with academia, science, and government. I believe that it has to start. The policy has to start up top. And then below, once that happens, consumers follow. And I believe that they're ready for it. Let's see here, we'll go this. Okay, so how does the technology work? So the garment is born at the factory. There's a data one input, excuse me. The inputs at the factory, the carbon footprint, the carbon offsetting, who made the garment, the textile, and the sourcing. The second input, data two, it's the customer registration. Emailing through they're able to register through website, apps, phone, and then we go further with customer returns, used garments, landfill diversion, and then we go to inputs from the brand. So once the garment is born, the customer purchases it, the customer returns the garment, and then we upcycle it into new products. So that the next data endpoint is the brand resells, creating a secondary market. So the inputs at the factory, once again, once it's sent back, all the information goes back into the cloud. The brand can either donate charities or third world organizations. As you guys know, with the fast fashion, you talked about this, is that the fast fashion is made so badly these days that it doesn't even make it to the secondhand markets. So third world countries aren't getting high quality products. And most of the third world countries, they want natural fibers because of the wicking components. So this is also a problem with the fast fashion. It's about making higher quality products that last longer, that's better for the planet and better for us. So let's see here. Okay, so how does this work? So customers are able to register through email, app, or website. Access is granted through the fashion brand. Customers access their portals to send back their used garments, accessories to fashion brand that are then donated, upcycled, or recycled into money, green insulation, or industrial cloths. Consumers are then given a discount or pre-offering on their next purchase, loyalty programs as well. And customers can verify their garments are sustainably made, authenticated, and as well as diverted from landfill. Our challenges: timing, paying attention to what market and consumers want. That's been the biggest thing. My first concept was 2016, and it was called Eco Smarty Pants. And I did a SWOT analysis, and the market was just not ready for it. Consumers, they weren't getting behind upcycled products. Most people thought that, as a result of corporations, that basically sustainability is just too expensive. And who wants waste? Well, I can tell you there's more money in waste than new products, which is something that you guys are figuring out. So education, knowledge. Until recently, and because of our young people, the public is becoming aware of the environmental crisis. It's truly a perfect storm. Policy. Until now, consumers were not ready for this type of business model. For years, consumers have been told by corporations that it's just too expensive to produce sustainable goods. Why is it relevant to place a monetary value on environmental footprint? It allows a company to compare their environmental performance. It allows a company to internalize the negative externalities of the second most toxic process in the world, garment manufacturing. It's a sign of transparency and innovation. Successes. We won California State Assembly, Coachella Valley Women-Owned Business Award, the County of Riverside County Valley Small Business Award. We were a finalist at the Global Climate Summit last year, or 2019. 2018, I apologize. And I got congressional recognition for a woman-owned business in 2018 and Coachella Valley Small Business Award. We're in the process of launching all 3 companies in 2020. It's been a challenge for me in terms of when you're doing this kind of business model, everybody wants to get involved. And usually everybody wants to get involved because it's a bright, shiny object, in particular with the technology. So I've had to be very careful in terms of, it's a timing thing. And when I created these companies, I created them to either work together or stand alone, right? So it's about manufacturing a product that's manufactured in a sustainable way. That includes solar, gray water, utilizing recycled, upcycled textiles, taking your waste back. And when you can upcycle into new products, what do you do with that waste? Well, you work with SMART, they're able to repurpose it, things like that. So I think that right now it is a perfect storm, and people they're wanting better products for the planet, and in particular the millennials. I have a huge following with the millennials, and they love this. So I feel that it is really 2020 is going to be a big time for us globally as well. I think there's a shift in consciousness that's changing, and I think it's key. And the fact that we have such a presence, and I'm seeing sustainability, and there's so much greenwashing that goes on, as we all know. So companies will say, yes, we make an organic cotton t-shirt. Well, what about the inputs? What about the manufacturing? What about taking the waste back? Things like that. What about donating? Asking these questions. And I believe that it starts with policy and then consumers. Consumers seem to be driving the message and telling corporations, we want this, we're ready for this. So this is ECM. Ecoculture manufacturing has many layers and moving parts because environmental sustainability is a big issue that has the potential to become the new benchmark for the American garment manufacturing industry. This is all about corporate and environmental sustainability through technology to create fashion with a conscience. Thank you for your time. And I apologize for the blunders.
Thank you so much, Nima. We really appreciate it. Thank you to all our panelists today for their presentations. Can we get a round of applause? We have time for just a couple of quick questions. I didn't want to cut anybody off because I thought that it was just chock full of information everyone was very interested in. So, but do we have just a couple of quick questions? If not, where'd our... Oh.
Isaac, how do you remove the labels, the graphics from the universal t-shirts? Oh, good.
Thank you. And veteran workers, yeah,
Nice.
jobs creation. Very
Glad it
manual.
wasn't chemicals.
No.
Kevin Miller, City of Napa. It's a quick one. I'm going to ask the stupid question to Isaac. What the heck is pilling?
Pilling is the little balls that form all over your sweater after a couple washes sometimes, and that's really what happens is you'll have a synthetic fiber that kind of pops out of a yarn in a fabric, and it's very tenacious so it doesn't break off all the way, and then you have a little fuzz from the cotton that's blended in there that wraps around it, and it becomes this unsightly mess, and then you're shaving it off, and you know, terrible stuff.
My question is for to CalRecycle. It seems to me like you have private companies doing all this great work, putting all this stuff together. In the world of recycling, in California at least, when consumers go, and consumers are on board in terms of what you guys are doing, if a consumer goes to buy a can of Coke or bottle of water, you pay a deposit for the recycling. Is there anything in terms of policy that is coming up for consumers who are now ready to embrace this idea to play a role or part in that whole process where they pay a certain amount of money when they buy a shirt, a t-shirt, and that money gets funneled to these companies who are struggling, in terms of funding to make this thing really worthwhile? Is my question.
You're jumping ahead a little bit because actually our next speaker is going to be speaking about some different options, including what you were alluding to, which is what we call extended producer responsibility. And so that's one of the things that our next speaker will be speaking about. And then also in our breakout or our World Cafe sessions that we're going to be having, that would be something we'd really want to hear from people, is if they see that being part of the future, that things that we should be considering, both for CalRecycle, but also for others, like what are the role, what roles do all of us play, and what could we do differently that would have an impact on what's happening today? So thank you. That's definitely leading into our next discussion. Do we have one more quick question, or? I'm sorry?
This question is for Nima. Shannon McCracken asked if you can talk about the work you're doing with Stella McCartney.
I'm not, the work that I was doing with Stella McCartney was not, it was an example of basically. So what you're talking about is in previous presentations I've done, I've used Stella McCartney as saying she's working with us as an example of utilizing upcycled products, right? So the goal is, so Stella McCartney comes to us and she says, you know what, I really like what you're doing, and I think I want to create an outfit 40% of upcycled and then the 60% of virgin. So the goal is that if Stella McCartney came to us and we were able to do this, we would actually go just a bit further and say, you know what, let's utilize this, our eco-sustainability technology in the manufacturing of this, because this will allow the Stella McCartney consumers to actually participate and actually being part of the brand, taking the waste back. And then, 3-4 collections later, we would be able to actually produce a completely upcycled collection for her based upon her past collections. And so that's what you're talking about. I've done presentations where I've used that as an example.
Well, actually, I think we need to move into our next speaker. I'm sorry about that. And I think we're going to take about a 2-minute break here just so that we can get ourselves reconfigured. So take the opportunity to take a quick stretch break, and it'll be 2 minutes. Thank you.
In Europe at that time, but there might be somebody from our team that could come. That would be great. Yeah.
We're still kind of the format of the textiles breakouts, but I'd love to have somebody kind of
Sure.
From our side, being what our designs.
Yeah.
We're working on pilots with our customers that utilize our core services that they want us to be
really good.
So much. So
Yeah.
it'd be really interesting to maybe offer up see to somebody.
Sure. Yeah. That'd be good. And in general, I think staying in touch on some concepts that are forthcoming, no matter what. It's not. It's not if, it's when, and right who. Right. All right. Good. Okay. Let's stay in touch. Nice to meet you. Yeah. Take care. Great. You're in Santa Barbara.
There's two, yeah, so paper, all the recycling is picked up.
Cuttable, yeah. Yeah, we probably have technology that can allow a higher profit business.
That's what I wanted to do. We can sell the system. All these houses
Yep.
that produces.
Yeah, lots of cotton cutting waste there.
You guys like
Upcycling, they cut this, and they give money back. Based on
give us a
have some volume, some data on that already, or are you proposing to start collecting?
No, we know that it exists.
Oh, and we know it's there too, yeah.
We know that it's there. The problem, as you know, is, the overhead in collecting
The logistics
the
of it.
logistics.
Yeah.
And it has to be bailed to be able to transport to you because you don't have, because of real estate.
Oh, yeah, no, it needs to be
I
densified.
think we're gonna get started now, so if everyone can take their seats, please.
Send guys to collect us as the bill. But we've never identified a market that we can send it to that can reuse it like you.
Everyone can take their seats, please. We're going to start.
Great, well. Hi everyone, my name is Teresa and I'm a policy advisor here at CalRecycle. So next we're going to talk a little bit about policy, and I just want to bring us back to why we're here today. So as a state agency, CalRecycle, our mission is resource conservation. And for those who are not familiar with us, we run recycling programs such as recycling tires, e-waste, beverage containers. We have a robust organics regulation happening right now. And we have a statewide target of 75% recycling, composting, and source reduction by 2020. And we're currently only at 42% right now, and this is year 2019. So we have a lot of work to do, and we're just trying to look at everything in our waste stream. And as Tracy mentioned earlier this morning, textile is 4% of the waste stream. So, we're interested in exploring what are the barriers for recycling, what are the technology barriers, what are the economic barriers, and what are the policy barriers. So up next, we're gonna have, I have the pleasure of introducing Dr. Joanne Brash, who will discuss some of the policy options with us. She has a PhD in textile economics and environmental analysis from the University of California, Davis, and she's also received a master's degree in textile science. She has more than 12 years of academic work experience, has been a lecturer at Davis, CSU Sacramento, and in Shanghai, China. And she's also a sustainability researcher at the University of Davis Health Systems. And she's a special project manager at the California Product Stewardship Council and the National Stewardship Action Council to lead projects that promotes circular economy using product stewardship and extended producer responsibility. So please welcome.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for staying through the end. I know the World Cafe coming up next, the discussions can be really robust and exciting. So take the next 20 minutes to really talk about what are the policy options that we have in driving circularity. So I know that the topic might be a little broad in terms of policies, but know that this presentation is really gonna focus on how do we drive circularity, increase recycling, and increase source reduction, everything on the waste hierarchy. So as Teresa introduced me, I do have a PhD in textile economics and environmental analysis. I am the only one in the world that has that. Individual program sponsored by Textiles, environmental policy, and industrial ecology. So again, 12 years of research experience. I teach in UC Davis in the Department of Textiles. I see some of my former colleagues and classmates. Go Aggies. We're one of 4 textile science programs in the United States. And believe me when I say the world of textile science is very small. I have seen, like I said, students, colleagues, all in this room. I'm really excited for us to all work together in moving forward. My area of expertise, though, is not fashion. Although most of my students do go into fashion, my research is actually in hospital trash. So I'd like to take a moment and thank everyone who commented on the textile products in our waste stream that are beyond the fashion industry. As you can see in this picture, actually, for several years, I was the sustainability researcher for the Davis Health System, charged with getting us to zero waste as a hospital system, as part of the UC system, and believe me, every barrier I hit was related to policy. So what can we do to actually intervene on these systems to actually drive it forward and increase sustainability? So I work for the California Product Stewardship Council. We are a 501c3 nonprofit. You can see we're small but mighty. We have grown to about 7 staff now. You might know us from passing some really famous and hard lifts, including the first in the world medicine and sharps needle disposal bill that passed in 2018. So although I'm up here talking about textiles and most of my academic experiences in textiles, we work with lots of hard to manage products. Solar panels, medicines, needles. The more toxic, the more we're on it. So I actually have quite a few board members here in the audience. Gretchen from Tuolumne County, Alexa from San Francisco. And so we primarily represent local government. Today I'll be talking about some of the local ordinances and things that are being discussed with local governments here in California and beyond. Also, again, thanks to our funders and our supporters that help us, continue the work that we do. So our goal at CPSC is actually to shift the cost burden from local government to a system that is fairly funded by the producers. So looking at what we typically call extended producer responsibility and product stewardship, which I will define in a few slides, but those are our areas of expertise. These are the opportunities to help our local governments who have been managing our waste systems for 100+ years into driving into a system that isn't reliant on waste and is more technologically advanced so that we can actually manage these materials sustainably. The system as it is right now is our local governments just have to deal with whatever materials come to them. So we want to be more active into what materials are we putting on the market, what materials are we consuming in our homes and putting on our bodies, and what materials are entering the waste stream and how do we work with those. So we work along the supply system, but ideally getting the producers involved with the end-of-life solutions. So in 2007, CalRecycle put out their strategic directive, and under Directive 5 was their producer responsibility clause, which is seeking a system of cradle-to-cradle products that are producer-financed and producer-managed programs. And that's the key difference for extended producer responsibility and product stewardship. Product stewardship is when a company voluntarily helps take stuff back, they're stewards of their products, they're stewards of what they put onto the market. When that is not enough, and believe me, we are at the point where voluntary action is not enough, then we come to what a policy option is called extended producer responsibility. That's when the producers fully finance the end-of-life management, they're responsible for managing the materials, recycling and disposing of the materials, and the philosophy is that if you internalize the external cost, if you make them pay for the management and end of life, it then becomes part of their business model. It then becomes part of their bottom line. So that's what are the philosophies behind extended producer responsibility. But is that the only option? No. What we're going to talk about today are, which realm and which sector of textiles is most impactful to regulate, and which are sectors of the industry that are doing very well regulating themselves. So the CPSC was very successful, and we've grown beyond, we can only do so much work in California when other states need to lead. So we've grown into a 501c4, which is the National Stewardship Action Council, also known as NSAC, and they were the ones who organized the Aquafil tour this morning. So the National Stewardship Action Council, very active as well in policy and piloting and working with manufacturers. And we were recently at the Textile Exchange Conference in Vancouver, talking about recycled polyester, microfibers, talking about carpet, as just some examples of policies that influence the textiles and clothing industry. So here's just a simple list of problems, right? This is kind of recapping what we've heard for the beginning of the day, and a lot of things many of you already know. Just the increasing volume of waste. We have lack of recyclability. Things are blended, we have extra chemicals, we have extra additives. findings that are just decreasing the ability to recycle them, even if we were to collect them. The inability to identify and sort hazardous substances. Many of you might have heard what the PFAS, so the perfluoroalkyls. These are an increasing topic of concern. We've already talked about it in terms of carpet, but we are seeing them in textiles and clothing. Just next week, on December 9th, the Department of Toxic Substances Control, DTSC, will be hosting a workshop on PFAS in textiles. So again, the government is aware that this is a problem. I got an email this morning that the International Ski Association just banned PFAS from the ski wax. So many of the manufacturers and producers in this room and webcast are in the ski industry and outdoor industry. So making that connection with maybe the chemicals are in some of the products linked to these forever chemicals like PFAS, silver, often associated with our industry. Microfibers, chemical washout, again, this is something most of us are familiar with, and we'll talk a little bit about how we can actually regulate these. Item number 7, maybe a lot of you don't actually make this connection, but this problem with lithium-ion batteries, something very common in the waste industry, is actually really applicable to wearable technology and a lot of the clothing that are adding technology into them. So as we start talking about regulations, know that batteries might be regulated, which could then in turn affect the textiles and clothing industry. So being aware of the waste industry and being aware of the problems in waste, going beyond just your one product type, will give you a more holistic vision of the problems and how we can solve them. The other thing we had talked about is the collection infrastructure. So textiles and clothing is one of the oldest industries that has reuse and thrift and secondhand, where the collection infrastructure has been established. Some of these pictures that I have up here are actually showing how a lot of historical paper, ancient paper making processes were made from recycled fibers, linen, cotton, processed, turned into paper. And this is ancient times. So how can we, in this modern times, utilize, similar approaches to get the most value out of our collection? And when we talk about this in some of the other products that are regulated, like for carpet and for mattresses, we call this convenient collection. What is the level of convenience that the consumers need to participate in a program? And with textiles and clothing, we have a different product than other types of in the waste stream. Not only is it easy to deconstruct, has opportunities for repurposing, it actually has a really high value stratification. So when you divert your used textiles, your Gucci's, your designer clothes are gonna hold a lot of higher value, and in that same waste stream, you could have something worth nothing. So the question is, once we divert the high value products, what we're left with are the things no one wants. And so I travel the world and I go to these really academic conferences and we sit around and we talk about single socks and dirty underwear. The things no one wants to talk about, no one wants to donate, but these are the things that are not valued. So how can we get a system that collects and processes these low value to keep them out of the landfill and to keep them perpetually in the economy? So what types of policies would actually drive that circularity? I would actually like to point out before I move on that we have an entire collection system. Although we do have a lot of thrifts and a lot of secondhand, we're leaving them with the trash burden. So when people donate their dirty socks, then they donate their ripped clothes, it is then now a burden on these nonprofits and these secondhand stores. And so again, we need to shift that burden off the taxpayers, off the nonprofits, and into the upstream. So how do we do that? How do we drive that circularity? So here we have the typical waste hierarchy. I actually pulled this from Canada. The Canadian waste hierarchy is a little more extensive than the one California uses. And I added that top line, regenerative. Because at the end of the day, doing less bad is not enough. We actually have to mitigate the damage. We actually have to improve the world. And that's what we mean by regenerative. I love that other presenters have used this word because that's the next step into actually improving the damages we've done. So what are the goals of a policy? Like if we introduce a policy, what are we trying to achieve? So obviously source reduction, as I'll go on to talk about, is one of the top priorities. Reducing your waste, reducing your consumption, and even in that manufacturing processes, reducing the toxics, reducing the chemicals, reducing the resources needed per product. Design for recyclability. Again, recycling is not enough. We need regenerative manufacturing processes, ones that not only take the plastic from the earth, but help preserve ecosystems, rebuild ecosystems that are damaged. And actually implementing producer responsibility. At this point, like we said, our local governments have been bearing the waste burden for 100+ years. So as we move forward into a system where we try to have zero waste, circular economy, where does the responsibility, who needs to come to the table? And one saying that we have at CPSC is, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. So we always encourage producers, manufacturers, those of you who are aware of what's going on, to get ahead of the curve, get ahead of the problem. So there are opportunities, both voluntary and less preferable mandatory. A great example of voluntary would be what the Textile Exchange is doing. So this is a voluntary group standard, trying to achieve climate neutrality, looking to reduce their carbon emissions. And Textile Exchange is one of the largest industry groups that has some of the largest brands. So again, moving the needle as a whole, like moving the needle as an industry. So not waiting for the stragglers to keep up. What's key about this type of initiative is keeping the industry moving instead of just waiting for the latecomers and the laggers. Some other examples, these are going to be mandated policies. So in Canada, there are 3 different municipalities that have ordinances directly related to textiles. Colchester has curbside textile collection. So what they do there is they have a dry fiber bag. It's clear, it has paper, and it has clothing. So like in San Jose and a couple other jurisdictions, some of them commingle in your single stream, which actually renders it contaminated, and often, like we talked about, once it gets to the MRF, it's really hard to segregate it. So although they have that here in a couple jurisdictions, it's not necessarily an ordinance, and they run into a lot of issues with cost, contamination, and segregation. The city of Markham, also near Toronto, they actually banned the textiles from the curbside collection. So no textiles are allowed in your curbside bins. Another saying that we have at CPSC is no ban without a plan. So what happens, you ban them from doing something that is natural and kind of common sense. What happens then is you have illegal dumping. So what the city of Markham experienced was, by banning it, they had a lot of illegal dumping of clothing, just either on the sidewalks, around town, and they had a lot of illegal collection, unauthorized collection bins started popping up around the city. So what the city of Markham actually did was similar to what the city of Halifax did, was actually city-controlled collection bins, meaning the clothing collection bins around the city were branded by the city and managed and placed by the city, but there were authorized nonprofits actually servicing and emptying the bins. They had to be a 501c3 nonprofit. They had to apply for the city, through the city, and the city actually assigned them a particular bin that was theirs. So it was one way to kind of work with partnerships and to address some of the collection costs. But at the end of the day, all 3 of these ordinances were extremely expensive. The results were source reduction is the answer. Every single one of these policies were funded by taxpayers. Every single one of these programs grew in cost the longer and longer they were implemented. Another example would be ThreadCycle, which is a partnership, kind of a campaign that's in King County. So again, King County had an ordinance that says we want to do city-controlled collection sites. And what they found was that it was extremely expensive. You're collecting, you're managing, you're disposing of a product that was not previously segregated. So what happened is once King County started this program, as a way to reduce their costs, was they actually launched an education campaign called ThreadCycle. ThreadCycle not only has the authorized drop-off locations, it has a huge reuse, repair, and kind of upstream source reduction component of it. Big part of the education campaign of ThreadCycle is where can you go to mend your clothes? Where can you go to learn to mend your clothes? Where are local clothing swaps in your neighborhood? Or maybe there are product-specific clothing swaps. As someone who's an avid snowboarder, I would more likely attend a snow-specific clothing swap as opposed to, something that's a more general. So a big part of the campaign was really looking at source reduction and educating the consumers as to how they can participate in a circular economy and not buying more and more clothing. But similar to the Canadian ordinances, the lessons learned was that these programs are extremely expensive. And source reduction and actually reducing the waste entering the stream is the best approach to actually managing these materials. So here we have the waste hierarchy, and what I've done is actually put these ordinances onto the waste hierarchy so you can see kind of where they lie. And if our goal is regenerative and our goal is source reduction, what are the best options to actually address these? So Textile Exchange, where they are redesigning their material sourcing, and they're working with brands to redesign the garments. ThreadCycle, looking at a campaign specifically aimed at reducing consumption and reducing waste. And then if you look further down the waste hierarchy, you do see more of the bans and the curbside collection, which are great, but they don't get us to our ultimate goal of a circular economy. Because at the end of the day, like we said, recycling is not enough. Recycling is very expensive, and nobody wants to pay for it. So what can we do with this issue of increasing consumption, decreased utilization per garment? But what we do is we have an opportunity to work together with our agencies, with nonprofits and NGOs, and the brands to actually come up with a system, not just a garment, but a system that allows us to clothe ourselves without guilt and to send our garments on to their further life cycle with no concern over, is this the right place? Did I put it? Is this the bin? Is that the bin? And that's what we mean by convenient collection. It has to be easy and understandable to the consumers on how they can participate. So here's the list a lot of people have been waiting for. So what are some of the ordinances that are under discussion? What are local jurisdictions? If we at CPSC represent a majority of the local governments in California, what are our associates talking about? What are some of the considerations, not just here in California, but things we've heard from other states and other jurisdictions as considerable approaches to addressing textile waste? So first and foremost, Assemblymember Bloom has had 2 bills here in California. 129, which was a directive to OPC to incorporate some best practices into their strategy and to incorporate laundry filtration onto state agencies using laundry. And then that one is still active, correct, Robert? So when the session starts in January, it'd be a really interesting one to follow. Bloom also did a previous bill, 2379, which did not go past 2018. And this was a bill looking at labeling the micro-shedding, the microfiber shed. So again, microfiber is a hot topic. We have another slide on talking about, where does the science relate to the policy? Recycled content standards, we know this is something that Textile Exchange works on. A lot of manufacturers are trying to meet that standard. But if we don't have a mandated standard, we're always going to be adhering to the lowest quality or the lowest standard. So when you implement standards, whether it's recycled content standards, labeling standards, the goal is, again, to move the needle. Where is the industry going, and how do we get those late adopters to actually move forward into this kind of circular economy? Again, bans on curbside collection, bans on landfill. We don't tend to support those unless there is a supplemental plan, whether it's a mandatory take-back, whether it's a stewardship organization. Again, no ban without a plan means you don't just tell people no. You tell them how they can participate and how they can actually remedy the situation. Number 8, let's see, the perfluoroalkyls. These are the PFAS, also looking at silver, other chemicals that wash off, DWR, looking at water repellency. These are all chemicals that are added on different stages of the manufacturing process, but oftentimes wash out in your home laundry. And for those of you who don't know, a lot of wastewater treatment plants are not equipped to removing PFAS, silver, et cetera. So again, looking at how we can address these concerns, and PFAS being one of the top concerns. With the e-waste and lithium-ion batteries, I promise you this is a problem. We have seen them in airlines and the news, but when you have a Google alert for dump truck fires, you will be surprised by how many of those fires are started by batteries. So again, this is not only just part of education and educating people that batteries don't go in the landfill, but there's also a responsibility that needs to be put on the manufacturers who are putting these batteries and embedding them into these products that can't be removed or maybe not labeled. So again, it's a major concern in the waste industry, and there are bills active on this. Let's see, there's a bill 1509 addressing lithium-ion batteries. So again, if you make products that put lithium-ion batteries in your garments, this could be a bill that would impact your manufacturing. So at CPSC, we work with local jurisdictions, we work with local governments, we work with companies, we work with recyclers. Again, we have a relationship with Aquafil. There's also several other recyclers here in the Sacramento area. There's an electronics recycler out at Mather. There's a polyester recycler, Circular Polymers, outside in Lincoln. So we have the infrastructure to recycle. We're just really looking at kind of closing the loop. So if you're interested in kind of working with CPSC, putting you in contact with a recycler, putting you in contact with a local government you would like to pilot something with, that's definitely something we can do. But as we move forward, knowing that the science is out there, the science on the PFAS are out there, the science on the microfibers are out there, and it's growing quickly. The pressure is growing quickly. And when you have policymakers who hearing from their constituents, what are you doing for microfibers? What are you doing on PFAS? The pressure is growing to actually do something. And this is the moment when we advocate to the companies and the consumers that are listening today to get involved in the legislation process, to find an NGO or to get a government affair official to attend the meetings, attend the hearings, and to submit your public comment. We do live in a democracy after all, and your inputs are very valued in the legislative process. So again, with the politics of microfibers, the policy is not going to wait for perfect science. But the science is out there that it's a problem. The science is out there that it is linked to textiles. Whether it's 100% or not, the policy doesn't wait for that. So again, be ahead of the problem. Get involved and advocate for the solution. And I promise you, especially with the Bloom bill and more interest in microfibers coming up, that it will be a topic in the legislature, not only in 2020, but beyond. So here we have the Ellen MacArthur Circular Economy graphic. And so we ask, the question is, where should we introduce policies? And really, as we've learned from the previous presentations, the biggest impact are going to be from phases 1 and 2, the upstream changes, looking at what chemicals you use, the emissions and the chemicals of concern and the utilization. So pre-consumption will have the biggest impact in terms of intervening and driving that circular economy. Steps 3 and 4 on this particular graphic, still very impactful, but gonna be very expensive. So radically improving recycling, I mean, there are people who've been trying to do that for years and they're close, you know, a couple $100 million deep and a few years into it, and they're close. So again, this isn't something, steps 3 and 4 aren't something you can just do overnight. So we recommend getting involved, especially with phases 1 and 2, in terms of driving a circular economy and where we can have the most impact for policy. So we do like to leave everyone on a positive note. So what can you do to help? So again, for those of you who in this room and on the webcast do design products, are involved in the manufacturing process, we encourage you to design for recyclability, design for the environment, to take the social and environmental externalized costs and build them into your product and into your product price, making products more durable, making sure they don't have as large impact on the manufacturing and on the earth. Labeling your products. You know, there's a lot of talk about education to the consumers, and labeling is gonna be your greatest interface with your products and your consumers. So making sure that what efforts you've done to make your products sustainable are communicated on your labels, whether it's recycled content, whether it's, you know, low impact dyes, these things matter. And another thing that could be a possibility, we talked about eco fees. Actually, in a recent bill that the National Stewardship Action Council passed on carpet just this last September, was the first precedent of eco-modulated fees. So with carpet in California, you pay a fee when you buy the product, and that fee goes towards the recycling and end-of-life management. The problem was some carpets are more recyclable, easy to recycle, less costly to recycle than others. So what AB 729 did was set a precedent on eco-modulated fees so that the carpets that have a higher impact on the earth, that are more costly to recycle, have a higher fee than those who don't. This is not only important for the cost of the program, this is extremely important for communicating to the consumers which products are truly greener and which products truly cost more for our economy to bear the burden. So again, eco-modulated fees are an option. So one way that companies can really get ahead of the problem, starting your own take-back program or joining a stewardship organization who is already doing a take-back program. You can collaborate and advocate during legislation. If you have a great idea for legislation, we encourage you to come talk to us. This is something that we do as part of our mission, is to introduce legislation, again, that reduce the burden from the local government. So if we have someone in the room or on the webcast interested in getting involved, we encourage you to contact us. And also looking to support organizations and associations leading the way. Looking at Textile Exchange, Californians Against Waste, the National Stewardship Action Council. These are just a few examples that I just see scanning across the room. But again, really great opportunities for individuals or companies to get involved in the legislative process and to get ahead of the problem. That's all I have. I'm a little ahead of time, but I know we have the World Cafe coming up, so we can take questions now or then. I'm not sure how you want to. Okay.
Thank you. Can we give Joanna a round of applause? We have time for a few questions. If anyone, I think Isaac in the back and.
Oh, you do. Yes.
Where are we at with the Bloom Act? And can we change the word microfiber to fiber fragments throughout that write-up? Thank you, Crystal, for instructing us all on that a few weeks ago.
Yeah, so it was held in one of the committees, and so when the legislative session starts in January, it'll likely get pulled to that same committee, which I believe is ESTM, which is Environmental Safety Toxics Committee. So that would be one opportunity for you to either submit a letter, to submit a public comment. You can also contact authors directly. It's another great way to get involved. You can also email us. We have a relationship, so we can arrange meetings.
Hi, Stan Philippi. I retired Cal EPA years ago. Is anyone seeing the middleman, the retailer? I walk through Costco and I see stacks and stacks of fleeces and such. Is anyone working to urge the middleman to back that stuff out of their product line? It makes it just too easy for somebody walking through the store to snag a article of clothing that they may not have even wanted.
I'm not aware of any type of retail standards in terms of what they can sell, but I know there's some talk of mandatory retail take-back, so making all the retailers have a collection site. There have been discussion. The previous Bloom bill was a microfiber labeling bill. So that one did not pass, but that would be one example of an attempt to kind of publicize that certain fibers and fabrics have that shedding ability.
What do you think about tipping fees and increasing them? For example, there's a recycler in Oakland. He sends 4 containerfuls, the extra long ones, down to LA to the landfill there because it's too expensive in Alameda County to dump them there.
That's a tough question because there's a lot of politics in this. I know the tipping fees really haven't been raised in quite a few decades maybe, so that is something that is being discussed. Our mission in particular is actually to kind of go away from a system that's reliant on end-of-life payments. So paying at the recycling or paying at the tipping fee, we don't really feel is the solution. Whereas if you pay either upfront, and whether it's internalized into your cost of the product or it's a visible fee, when you pay upfront, you're more likely to actually recycle it at the end of life. When we have the fees at the end, that's when you're gonna have more illegal dumping. So if you have to pay to dispose of something, or you can set it here on the ground for free, we do see a lot more illegal dumping when you pay the fee at the end of life, as opposed to the point of purchase. Not really my goal.
Hi, Patty Breslin, Reeves Alliance. So I have a concern about product takebacks in that, there's no reason why those same products can't just be bailed up and shipped off to other places, just like so much of what we have now. So I don't know if there's thinking around that.
I think a lot of the thinking kind of comes around the cost of collection, cost of bailing, and cost of actually sending it to the recycler. So kind of internalizing that cost into those who are selling it. But again, these are all discussions. So whether a mandatory take-back is individual retailers, whether it incorporates a stewardship program, there are a lot of different opportunities on how that would actually take shape. But the idea is to not rely on a single stream collection. So looking at other sources to collect, other avenues to collect.
Hey, Joanne.
Hi.
Kevin Miller, City of Napa. Before I ask my question, I think the answer is both upfront and back end, because governments have to respond to the cost of disposal versus any other diversion program. So if it's not there, disposing is artificially cheap. So you really want both. But my question is about the eco-modulation, which I think is the future, but who's the independent arbiter of that that's gonna decide? How do you envision that model?
So with that particular example, the program is actually run by a stewardship organization. So the stewardship organization would set the rules on how they're modulated. They would actually do the modulating themselves. There would be some sort of enforcement. I believe CalRecycle is involved with the enforcement and regulations. But for that particular example, it would be the stewardship organization running and collecting the money.
Hi, I have two things. I just wanted to respond in part to your question about take-back programs, and that it's actually setting us up for a much longer-term circularity model, that it's not just about the articles that are going into the bins today, but it's about setting us up as a consumer system to take back our garments and get them back into circularity. So it's not just a drop-off thing. It's actually getting it back into circulation.
So there's going to be requirement to. So you're saying that there will be a requirement to make sure that those things that are dropped off are dealt with responsibly?
I don't know that it'll be a requirement, but I do know that that is in large part what a lot of these take-back schemes are headed towards, is they're not just taking it back to use the garment as a garment in a second life. They're actually taking it back to be able to recoup that fiber in a circular model to reuse it again and again and again. And setting up collection bins is just the first step of taking us all towards a circular model. So it's just the beginning, but we have to start somewhere. So that I just wanted to add to that answer. But my question for you, Dr. Brash, is, and I think you may know where I'm headed with this, is do you think that these eco-modulation fees may be a way to promote preferred fibers in conversations that you and I have had potentially? Is this maybe a way to incentivize not just consumers, but companies as well to use preferred fibers over non-preferred fibers over conventional? Is this another tool in our chest of how we could promote the use of preferred fibers?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you have a front-facing visible fee, not only does it educate the customer, but actually could impact their sales. So when a product is going to repeatedly have that high fee, they could face either reduced sales, they could face, public backlash as to, why don't you have the lower fee when, this brand with a similar jacket does? So absolutely, it's going to incentivize more and more companies to aim for that lower tier, which would be the greenest tier or the lowest cost fee.
Thank you for your presentation. Rebecca Burgess, Fibershed. I just had a question about how the extended producer responsibility would be determined. Is that, again, you mentioned a stewardship group would potentially CalRecycle, look at eco-modulation. Is that the same government agency that would even, define an extended producer responsibility fee, I guess, in this case?
So it all depends on how the law is written. But typically, both producer responsibility programs and product stewardship programs are not run by CalRecycle. And that's one of the philosophies, is that if it's a producer-run program, they're the ones handling the products. They're the ones managing the recycling, et cetera. So it depends all on how it's written, but typically, one of these EPR programs or product stewardship programs have a third party or a stewardship organization. In several of the bills here in California, we require that organization's a 501c nonprofit. So that nonprofit is the one, producers pay into it, the nonprofit is the one who manages the program. So for example, with carpet, the stewardship program is called CARE, Carpet America Recovery Effort. For mattresses, the stewardship program is called MRC, Mattress Recovery Council. So if there was to be a law, an EPR law on textiles and clothing, there would typically be a mandate to incorporate or actually utilize a stewardship organization to run the program. So CalRecycle is just the one enforcing and kind of checks and balances those organizations, but the money doesn't ever come to CalRecycle. The money goes straight to the organization running the program.
Thank you. And just one last question related to that. In an implemented vision, how do you see, given textiles and the complexity of the retailer versus there's like REI aggregates from multiple brands, you have Patagonia selling their own. How do you see something like that implemented in a state where corporate headquarters for the brands are here, but the supply chains are overseas, and then you have amalgam businesses?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It gets really complicated. And as you can imagine, pharmaceuticals are really complicated as well. So the way they are typically written, the EPR programs are kind of laid out on who the responsible party is. First being the producer. If the producer's not in California, not adhering or isn't, participating in the program, it would be the importer. If the importer is not in California or participating in the program, the third responsible party, I believe, is the distributor. So again, it's written in the law, so that if one person isn't taking responsibility, someone is.
Thank you.
Hi, Andrew with MXV Ventures. I have a question. Across the regulatory landscape from municipalities up to international, legally speaking, impact-wise, where are the biggest opportunities? Where are legislators' hands held? Is there international efforts? Kind of where is maybe the state level the sweet spot for impact? What are your opinions with that?
Ooh, that's a good question. If I go back to these ones, I'd say the biggest impact would be phases 1 and 2. So the manufacturing, the upstream. If I can also go back to this list, are some good examples of how we can have impact without, taking the whole pie. Like when you look at textiles and apparel, it's so big of an industry. And again, fashion is just one part of it. So if we're regulating protective clothing, if we're regulating automobiles, there are going to be different policies. And we often talk about things in iteration. So not looking for the perfect policy in the first try, but getting somewhere where we can address toxics in one bill, or looking at the modulated fees to kind of drive those upstream changes. So where I think the biggest impact would be to regulate upstream, to shift that cost burden. Is that the lowest hanging fruit? Probably not. I think there might be easier ordinances and easier laws to pass. But if you're looking for that sweet spot and that most impact, it would be in the manufacturing phases.
Okay, thank you.
I think we only have time for one more question, and yeah.
I actually have a question on the microfiber, the number 1, the slide you were just on. So at our conference, we visited a plastics lab in Vancouver. And one of the huge learnings I had is that during the, I don't know which year it was, or if it was in the United States or in Canada, but at one point, washing machines were designed with a filter in the washing machine. And then it broke too many washing machines. Consumers got lazy to change the filter. It would block the machine, and the machine went to fritz. So brands just took out that filter again because they could, and nobody stopped them from funneling all of this into the wastewater or into the environment. So knowing that the design solution is potentially already there, what would it take from a legislative standpoint to require washing machine manufacturers to make that filter mandatory, for example? Like there are regulations around your car cannot emit anything and everything, so maybe a washing machine also cannot emit everything and anything, but
yeah,
I'm sure there's complexity around it. I just am curious what it is.
If my bill's correct. So the 129, the Bloom bill, does have a component on it that would require filtration systems on all laundry for state agencies. So again, on how we regulate and who we regulate can be a little complicated. So there are local jurisdictions looking at any new washing machine installed would have a filtration system added. Whether that passes or, that's another question. At the state level, they're looking at regulating either public agencies, commercial laundry, so looking at sector at a time. Again, when you look for the big pie in the sky, you're looking at a really heavy lift. So there is momentum at the local level. There is momentum at specific sectors of laundry, but there hasn't been a lot of traction across all washing machines yet.
Great. So Roberta, do you want to come up and explain the World Cafe? And then in the meantime, I just want to let you guys know that for those interested, we do have a grant program. We have $16 million grant program for fiber, glass, and plastic that's available for fall 2020. It's intended to lower the greenhouse gas emissions by expanding existing capacity or building new capacities. That's diverting materials from landfill for like plastic, textiles such as clothing or fiber and glass. And our grants team is here, Paulina and Victoria, if you have any questions on that program. So. I'm sorry? Victoria and Paulina, are you still here, Paulina?
I think Paulina left.
Okay.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Roberta. So we're going to transition into the World Cafe event. So thank you for sticking around. When you checked in, you were given a different color label for your name badges. So what we did was we kind of wanted to separate people into different categories. So that way when we split off into the World Cafe event, we have people representing the different industries to support different opinions and brainstorming during when we're asking our questions. So I believe there's 6. Emily, how many categories? You have the list. 6, okay. I know I don't know all the colors. Emily's got all the colors, but basically try and find, we're gonna split off into groups of 5, I believe. So if we can have one kind of post up over here in this corner back here, one over by these doors, one over here, and then we'll kind of wild card the other group. And just try and group with people that don't match the same color stickers as you do. It's gonna be uneven to a degree, but try not to group with other people that have the same color. So we want to create the rainbow with non-rainbow stickers. And then for the CalRecycle staff that are here, can you also go ahead and post up at those positions?
How many groups do you think you want?
Oh, there is one over there. Okay, do you need a pen? I don't have a whole lot, so. Does everybody have?
We've got one set up over here. Yeah, so right up here. Oh, too far. This one. We have one right here. We have one in this corner. We're setting up a third one over here. And I think we're going to try and do 4 groups, I think.
And then, we got to put questions up. Yes. There's one right up there right now. Oh, okay. Yeah. Awesome.
For me, I was surprised how much landfill from the manufacturing. I thought they were casting on their own. That kind of shocked me. We didn't get those sort of interactions.
I think we have, don't we have here, we have one, another, we have one back there. Yeah, we have one.
Alright.
So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, I've got 10 in this group, I've got. Probably looks lonely, we need people over there.
Can some people from this group over here, can we kind of like split you up in half and have you go back over to Emily? Emily, wave your hand. Yay!
There's Emily.
Big groups are good, but we have plenty of easels and plenty of markers, so we want a bunch of different opinions. Okay, so For anyone who has never done a World Cafe event, what we're going to do is we're going to be asking a series of questions. The paper that you have here in front of you, use that for your brainstorming. Use buzzwords, pictures, phrases, ideas, anything that gets your mind thinking about the questions that we're asking. And so we're going to have a timed event, probably 3 to 4 minutes on this first question, and then we're going to go around around the room, and everyone's going to kind of talk about what they've come up with. And after that's done, so say the first group goes, the second group, instead of reiterating kind of what's already been said, let's just kind of keep the ball rolling and add new ideas, new concepts. And so we'll get around the room. That way we don't have too much of the repeat of information. So we want to keep the fresh ideas rolling. So let me get my phone and stopwatch. All right. So the first question, what is the most surprising or shocking thing you learned today? I'm going to go ahead and give you guys, let's do 4 minutes and go.
We find one thing as a group.
Yeah, we don't have a minute. Either Emily or Tracy. There's an orange one that looks like a pen. I can be for me. Also, if you're participating via webcast, feel free to go ahead and email us. And at the end of each question, we'll go ahead and check that inbox. And if there's different ideas in there, then we'll make sure to go ahead and bring them up at the end of each round. I share that. I would put it. We're not getting it from the
But that's not a sustainable approach. It's shocking that it's pyramid. Purpose, cycle, and I have no clue. They can't even tell me in terms of furniture. They don't know what they're throwing away. How many bulky items and what it is, where it came. And that's it. They don't have any.
All right, we've got 1 minute left, folks.
What are the big components that we can keep?
To your point, it doesn't even recycle. And that's even not the number one solution. I was surprised. So yeah, we got it all connected here. How far behind California is from here.
I would say maybe isolated pieces.
Growing up in Germany, I mean, when I was a kid, clothing was picked up, the bottle containers, village, you know, you bring your glass into the container separated by green container, green glass, brown glass, white glass.
Separated the glass?
Yeah.
You go into the store?
All right, folks, that's 4 minutes. Go ahead and finish up writing your idea down. And if you can, at the top of your paper, please make sure you put question number 1, because we will be keeping these pieces of paper for our references going into the future.
Wow. Tell me when. It's working.
Oh, I'm Marco. My 20 years, and then I went to Yeah, we're for you.
All right, guys, can I go ahead and get you to wrap up? And we're going to go ahead and start up here in this corner. So let's keep a listen. Here we go.
What most surprised our group was the amount of post-industrial waste that's created by the textile manufacturing systems. There was an amazement about the general lack of understanding that we all have about existing textile reclamation systems, and then also the awareness that we probably have very few textile reclamation systems. And then it was also amazing to understand that really recycling is not the #1 eco solution. We all know that. And so the idea of the upcycling and the other aspects of textile systems that could be enhancing the materials as they exist once they're in the biosphere, that it was amazing that we're still also not understanding that recycling isn't the #1 way to go, and that's kind of astounding. And then we were also surprised by how far California is behind, how far the US is behind compared to Europe and Asia. I guess maybe it was more Europe that we mentioned here. And then how far the consumers are behind in understanding labels. So a lot of educational surprise, like, wow, we don't really understand what we're going after either.
Thank you. All right, some great stuff. All right, who is the spokesperson over here? All right, Kate.
Okay, our group thought what was shocking or surprising was the amount of clothing that's landfilled. How sometimes the lack of infrastructure or ability to get power, like current PG&E issues, that we've had this waste hierarchy for quite a while, and we still have really no ways to deal with, or we don't really think about the reuse. We were surprised a little bit that there are some legislative proposals already underway that have some of this addressing textiles, and very surprising that washing machines used to have filters. Some of us didn't know that for those fibers, and just the growing amount of plastic in clothes is kind of so hard to think about and hard to scale in your mind.
Perfect. All right, thank you. All right, Teresa, how about your group? Who's the spokesperson? Isaac,
Yes,
go
so
ahead.
we were surprised by a lot of the same things. Great minds think alike. But we were also, I personally was shocked that Gen X is the laggard recycling generation as a Gen Xer. Methane bacteria to fiber, mango materials, that's always awesome. And what else did we have that wasn't already mentioned? I think that's it too.
Great. I mean, there's a lot of really good information that's been put out over the course of the day. So, I mean, some real good sticking points. So thank you guys. Emily, how about your guys' group? Who's the spokesperson?
So that upcycling is not on anybody's list kind of in the presentations. I heard the word once, and I think that you guys mentioned it as well. That's certainly not a huge part of the solution, but it is part of the solution. So we were surprised that that didn't come up. Filtration systems did exist for washers, and they don't anymore. We were shocked at that. I think some of you mentioned that. How few companies are actually doing something. So a lot of conversation starting. It's like we're at the very beginning of something, but not very far down the path of actually executing for most companies. So it's more of a discussion. Need to focus on the quality of end product fibers. We had somebody here who's looking at implementing things for his state, and they hadn't even considered that there was a difference in quality when you're recycling for the fibers. We talked about itchy wool sweaters versus long staple fibers. And then the high cost to recycle textiles, needing to separate the textiles into different groups and how much it costs to do that, that things are sent overseas because it's so expensive to do here. That was our list.
Great, thank you guys for sharing. All right, last but not least, who is your spokesperson over here? You are Alexa, all right.
I think we're repeating almost everybody, but I'll just go through the list real quick. We were surprised by the low cost of textiles as a raw material for export and in the supply chain. Aquafil's lack of access to power. Recycled bottles' inability to be circular. I guess they can go into textiles but not recycled again. That is what we heard. Fibers being the number one material item found in SF Bay. High levels of landfill textiles was surprising. The military's biggest buyer is the biggest buyer of rags. And home and hospitality textiles are mostly made up of cotton. That was a surprise to us.
Thank you, guys. Victoria, did you have any emailed submissions? Not for that one? Okay. So if you want to flip over to another page, or if you have room, just create a line so that way we know we're moving on to the next question. So the next question we got is, if we wish to reduce textile waste by 50% by 2030, what new collaborations must happen? It's a real thinker. So go ahead and start. We'll give you 5 minutes on this one. Yep.
So Shirley, are you saying you want people to graduate with some?
Middle schools, high schools.
All schools.
I mean, you have to take, a driving course to drive.
A wearing course to wear.
Go out
There
to
you
buy.
go.
Like, how do I?
Oh, that's a good phrase. Maybe make frugality fun. Frugality fun. Well, people can have social experiences mending their clothes in mending circles. We did a mending bar at California College of the Arts, and people drank beer and put buttons on their clothes. That was fun.
Pricing or charging apparel at its true cost. Give a percentage back to the actual workers. I don't know, some solution that makes fabrics encourages down that fashion cycle, something that
makes people not. Of course, and you.
All right, guys, we've got just under a minute left. All right, let's go ahead and wrap up those last thoughts. One more minute? All right, one more minute.
We're solving the world's problem.
Okay, that's 1 minute. Finish up your thoughts. I'm going to move over to this group for the first time. We're going to go kind of round robin. So, if I could get everyone's attention as you finish up writing, give it over to Kate.
That's great.
We kind of got stuck on this concept of how important consumer education is, early education components, but that would have to be at the same time you're trying to educate people, but you have to have the infrastructure in place already. So people building infrastructure with education, importance of marketing throughout, which leads back to education. We're not totally on our topic, but humanizing textiles, the idea that people make them, which a lot of people might not think about. And then, collaborate with cultural influencer, who's the Greta Thunberg for textiles, we're saying, and how do you get more attention on those folks?
Awesome. All right, Teresa, moving on to your group. Oh man, you wrote a lot. Holy cow. Good brainstorming action back here.
Okay, so collaborations. Well, we found out that LA Clean Tech Incubator is doing post-industry, post-consumer pilot for the city of Los Angeles. We're working on a program, and so is Athens Services on the commercial side. So there's a collaboration that's already going to be happening. We need private and public funds for this, and we can't rely just on the hauler because usually those contracts are already settled. And so you have to go back to amending those contracts to be able to try to get money out of them. So we need more access to those monies. CSU and UC's education and collection, early childhood education. Also, we need to make sure that there's a connection between garment workers' rights, making sure that we know where the public sourcing is coming from, sustainable fair wage, and then connecting that back to back-end management. So there's a holistic nature there. And the garment workers and union rights should be at the table all the time, and should not be a last-minute thought. California Apparel Brand Coalition would be nice for with producer responsibility, and then institute state contracted. Prisons, hospitals, college vendors, event collaborators. I think I don't know what that says. Private event. Collateral for private events, and then also media and Hollywood, just as you had said as well. And we brought up that Billie Eilish, one of the more popular singers of today right now, is extremely on this. So we need to get some media representation.
Great, thanks guys. I mean, that was a lot of great ideas. So, all right, Michelle, go ahead.
So we were talking about having a scalable plan. In other words, how can we kind of leverage best practices, really unite maybe as a nation and as a world, looking at what we can do. So how can we communicate? I think conferences like this are a good way to do it. And if you look at the fast food, slow food conversation, that has really evolved. I think everyone knows what farm to table means at this point. Wouldn't it be nice if we got to that level of understanding for this industry? And I think we're paralleling that movement. We're just quite behind it. So looking at that, consumer education, that straw turtle example that was given was really good. So what can we do for consumer education that's going to capture people's imaginations at that level? How can we encourage repair and maintenance? So there are people out there that are doing visible mending, and it's a thing, and it's very popular with a small group of people. So how could that be more mainstream? And if you're going to do visible mending, that means you buy something worth mending in the first place. So what is it that's worth mending in the first place that you would want to buy? Take back programs, looking at, with take back programs, could they do more recreation and not just shredding things? So could they be working with artists to recreate a collection? Could they even plan what their recreation is going to look like based on, this year's collection? In 2 years, we're going to recreate it to that, and have that plan in place so that when they have the take back program, they're actually producing a limited edition special value rather than just shredding things or, handing them off somewhere to go lower in the food chain rather than being upcycled into higher into the food chain.
I really like that last point. Yeah, great ideas. Thank you, Michelle. Good job, guys. I'm so happy. Okay, moving along. Okay, who's the spokesperson this time? Marissa? Okay, there we go.
So we thought about this question in terms of communication and information flow across the value chain and through the supply chain. And so we started with there needs to be collaboration between whoever's collecting the textiles and then the sorter graders in terms of how you feed those facilities that do the sorting grading, and also fiber sorting. And then there has to be collaboration between the sorting facilities and the recyclers, the mechanical recyclers, the chemical recyclers, in terms of what their feedstock specifications are. And then moving that further along the chain, there has to be the same kind of communication between the recyclers and whoever is purchasing the feedstock, purchasing the outputs of the recycling facility and what their specifications are. So like the yarn manufacturers, for example. Of course, there has to be communication and collaboration between brands and consumers, so there has to be information flowing both ways there, from brands out to consumers, and also consumers feeding information into brands about usage and patterns and behaviors and things like that. Government has a role also in terms of not only policy, but also in terms of incentivizing local infrastructure and local systems. And what was the other thing we were saying about government? I forgot. And then, of course, you need someone to finance the system. So whatever solution there is to reach 50% reduction in textile waste by 2030 has to be a system that's financed. So you need someone to finance the infrastructure, the R&D. And essentially, it's just everyone across the value chain has to maintain open communication.
Great input, thank you. As I truck along across the room, there's comedy spiced in. Not great comedy, but it's there.
All right, so we started with collaborating with educators starting from the young ones to the oldest on, just changing our mindset around consuming, the impact of how we spend our money, what we buy for clothing, making frugality fun. But also taxing cheap imports, putting a damper on the fast fashion movement by just making that fashion a little bit more expensive and hopefully discouraging a few people from buying plenty of items every few months. Extending the producer's responsibility, eco-modulation, and also what I talked a little bit about is enabling on-demand replenishment, so reducing the amount of stuff that brands have to pre-produce in a year ahead of the season, and that might end up sitting in warehouses and never get sold. So to enable them to do shorter runs and then replenish on demand domestically as they need it. Huge social shift economically, environmentally. And I think last but not least, we talked about maybe giving CalRecycle a rebranding to move up in the waste hierarchy, to name it maybe CalReuse, CalRefuse, and also shifting some of the budgets that are still allocated for grants, etc., to the recycling world, shifting those towards upcycling, towards refusing, new technologies and innovations around, refusing and reducing and reusing versus recycling.
I like the rebranding idea.
I'm just going to put it out there that Cal refuse, it might be a little confusing. So
Cal Reduce works. I like that one. We did have one input from the email, so go ahead, Victoria.
Yeah, this is from Shauna McCracken, who emailed in a really thorough comment. A much stronger bridge needs to be built between the textile industry and the sustainability field. Experts from each do not have the history of talking to each other. Textile industry folks are often recreating the wheel already developed by sustainability experts. There's also a lack of understanding among textile professionals of the end-of-life process. For example, how a modern landfill works, how it's designed, and how biodegradability is largely a myth. The point was made in various ways that education and behavior change among consumers is key. Behavior change experts are already out there, and those with that type of background need to consult with them rather than guessing at what works. In all bold and italics, studies show that education and information is not effective at producing behavior change. In summary, we need to use our expertise to drive parts of the system that we understand and invite those with other types of expertise to contribute their knowledge. We have no time to waste.
For sure. Oh, yeah. Kat's already Kat. I keep calling you Kat. I tell you, it's Kate. We're moving on to the next question. Holy cow. Oh my goodness.
Sorry. I want to make sure we get this one.
Okay, yes. So we're going to move into the next question, everybody, and I'm going to go ahead and give you 4 minutes on this one. What should the state government be doing? I mean, feel free. Just go, no holds barred. 4 minutes. Go ahead. Okay, guys, that's time. So this time we're gonna go ahead and start with Teresa's group. Teresa, you guys ready? Okay, so let's go ahead and start with Teresa's group. Present your ideas for what should the state government be doing? Yes, sir.
Okay, so we really liked the modulation and the incentivizing the producers by taxing those who make bad products or putting tariffs on those things and rewarding those who make good products. That's a big one. Sounds like it's on the agenda already or being contemplated maybe.
I don't know that information.
Should happen.
Tracy, the modulation.
Oh, I was just saying we really liked the ideas that were brought up earlier about extended producer responsibility, generally speaking, and that bad products, the state should be mandating that bad producers, bad actors are punished and good actors are supported. It's just that simple. That'll help change things quickly. But aside from that, we talked a lot about the need for supporting the development of infrastructure for high-value recycling. There's bonds that could be shifted to be focusing on this. And the support of R&D for technology optimization and scaling, bringing things like optical sorting into the state and testing that and optimizing it with our municipalities. And then a ban on polyfluorocarbons, right? PFAS, bye-bye. Let's just ban it.
All right, sounds like some good input there. Thank you very much. And Michelle, go ahead and give us some of your ideas.
Okay, so we also had EPR. What does that stand for again?
Extended producer responsibility.
Definitely to not have it be a consumer fee, but have it be more of an industry fee. So we agreed on that. And then the state government could be funding, supporting, and facilitating collaboration for everything that was listed in number 2, which includes conferences like this one. And you said it's the first one you've done? Thank you, thank you, thank you for doing that. It makes a big difference to support those of us who are interested so we have things to share with other people. So I think that's in there. We talked about data tracking and having more information to make decisions. I thought that was really brilliant. We thought it was really brilliant that, who was it that talked about going after the 100% cotton from the hotels? Yeah, low-hanging fruit, but statistics would tell you that's a place to go if you had enough granularity. So you guys figured it out, but sometimes having data allows you to make educated decisions that you wouldn't be able to otherwise. And then in education and outreach, what if the state had goals and those were publicly announced and we tied in the metrics to say where we are? What if we had a declared goal as a state and we said, this is where we are and this is where we want to be and this is when we want to be there? And then we reported on how we were doing.
Just wanted to add to that. CalRecycle has the 2018 waste characterization study coming out, and I believe we have a textiles category, but one of the suggestions was expanding that category and trying to categorize the different types of textiles within that.
I love getting that suggestion. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you so much for that suggestion. Actually, it's something that we've been advocating for a while. So hopefully we'll see a little bit more of a breakdown than we have before, but definitely want to hear from folks and about what material types or how we could further break that down for what uses, because that helps us with advocating for spending that extra time and money to do that. So thank you.
The survey could be more robust if we knew what we wanted to collect.
All right, thank you guys. Okay, so moving along, because we want to try and squeeze in one more question. Maybe we're gonna see how this goes. So, Marissa, who's presenting? Yeah, you do. I can do round robin.
So echoing a lot of what was said, fostering those policy discussions, incentivizing local infrastructure and making sure it's easy to do all these things, and that's put in place. Creating uniformity at the state level, so it seems like a good opportunity for the state where maybe a lot of municipalities are already doing this, just create one overall system to make it easy and clear and concise, such as bins and collection, creating economic incentives like taxing the right things, non-recycled fibers, that is, and also providing grant funding for both new technology in R&D and also consumer education. And then I think what was already said, like tools that can be useful. So lists of recyclers in the state or different metrics that are being looked at and worked towards. Thanks.
Perfect, thank you. I'll figure out which end to grab the microphone from. I don't know, I'm still learning this thing. All right, here we go.
They elected me here, I guess. A lot of overlap with some of the concepts already discussed, but we identified a clear problem. We need security clearance for the importation of single-use and styrofoam into the Cal EPA building, which was witnessed. Government subsidies for mom and pop thrift stores to collaborate with designers and maybe mobile mending or some innovations upstream. Change the grant funding model to put more emphasis and funding on the high end of the hierarchy, so prevention, reduction, reuse, repair, all the front end models, since that was brought out in Joanne's presentation, that's where the biggest bang for the buck lies. Why don't we put the most bucks there? Reduce barrier to entry. So I brought that one up back in the Department of Conservation days when they did grant programs. They used to do a two-step process. So they do a concept, that may be a 1 or 2 page concept, and then they would tell you whether it's worth you going for the full-blown and very expensive, very complicated, very tedious grant application process through the state. So maybe that would remove a barrier to entry for new ideas. What was this one? Where's Stefan? Oh, Shirley at it? Tell me more about that one.
This one?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, this is your concepts.
Oh, the concepts. Oh, I couldn't read that word. Create press releases and solutions with facts about waste prevention at home and choosing to refuse or reuse.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, really quickly, Kate.
Okay, stronger legislation. Get Scott Wiener on board because he's been an advocate of waste stuff, I believe. There was some discussion about cotton production that I'm going to avoid right now. More grants, hundreds of millions of dollars. Waste diversion is the wrong metric. Let's look at source reduction and upstream. We need policies that internalize the costs for manufacturing, I believe, that then can be used for those grants. Eco-modulated fees, funding infrastructure, education, repair, and reuse. And then how about taking back home economics, doing school curriculum. Also, waste characterization 2018. We have the categories synthetic, non-synthetic, and shoes and belts. So a little bit more separation.
Great, thank you. Okay, let's take a look at what the last question is, because I know there are some people that are probably wanting to leave, but we have time to do one more if we do it really quickly. So, oh, I have the clicker, okay. Okay, so, yes, so I'm gonna give you guys 3 minutes to go ahead and go over this one. Recycling will not solve everything. How do we minimize impacts of clothing production and increase the amount of textiles reused, repaired, and recycled? How do we drive things up the hierarchy? Go ahead, we got 3 minutes. I'll participate. Okay. Minimize impacts of clothing production. We don't talk about this stuff every day. Like, all of us
talk to a couple people every day, just one fact, like just start making it personal.
Yeah. Okay.
It's like, I don't know, I just think talking about all these binary facts
So bringing
faced with,
yeah. So talk
we
about
gotta make it
more.
change.
Okay.
Talk more about what we learned here today.
So I in the UK, I did my master's over there, and they have this whole program called Textiles, and I love it. And so they promote clothes swaps, they promote repair, they promote reuse.
Re-commerce?
Yes. I don't know how big re-commerce is over there.
Just resale of
Like Stitch Fix.
Yes.
And,
Well, not Stitch
or not
Fix,
Stitch
but
Fix. There's another one. Thread.
Poshmark.
All right, guys, so that is the time because we are coming close and I want to make sure we hear everybody's thoughts. So, as you guys are finishing up your ideas, I'm going to come up over here. And Emily, Joanne, your group, do you guys have a spokesperson? Is it going to be Emily? Okay. Go ahead and go.
So we took some of the ideas from our last group speaker, the early childhood education for repair and the home ec idea, and really emphasized that quality over quantity and maintain that. And then trying to inspire different target industries. So like how each industry, how would you hit each industry to have a better impact? It kind of goes back to that turtle and the straw example again. And then fostering technology and innovation development, focusing on research and development. And then making some of the systems we already have that are new kind of cool. So the examples were ThreadUp and Posh. Like, how do you get more people on board with that mentality? And one of the suggestions was through social media, but maybe there are others.
Awesome. And sometimes all you need to do is just bring in an idea together. Like, for instance, America Recycles Day was last month, and CalRecycle, we hosted our own little upcycled / thrift store / secondhand fashion show that was put on in the lobby. And it was a lot of fun. We held our first clothing swap, which was highly successful. So, and a lot of people were like, I don't know what a clothing swap is. It's like, well, now you know, and you can see the benefit of it. So things like that to think of too. All right, and what do we got over here? All in fairness, all in fairness.
My favorite. We talked about creating trends or competition to make it more desirable and this is why I don't do this. I lose my words. Okay. Recognition of business case. Legislation supporting retail take-back programs with manufacturers and localities. And incentivizing leasing programs and deposits and refunds.
Great input, thank you. All right, come across over here. Nicole, since you were writing, do you want to speak? All right, thank you.
Similar to what the group in the back talked about, just putting an emphasis on the importance of craft as far as like home ec and things like knitting and sewing, slow fashion. One of the ideas we came up with was to exempt reused or repaired items from things like sales tax or other forms of fees. And then we also talked about re-commerce and how that's a huge stream for reusing and reducing. And my personal goal of 2019 that I challenge everyone here to do would be to purchase only used items. So I decided I'm only going to do consignment this year. It's been very challenging, except for important things like underwear. I will admit it's not consignment. But Shirley mentioned a really important thing about talking about it, and you would be surprised the people I would not normally talk to about things like recycling and reusing and consignment. When I say, hey, I got this new purse, but it's not new. I actually got it for a really good deal, and it's a designer brand, and it was used. They love that. And then, oh, well, where'd you get it? The Real. Oh, well, you use Poshmark? What's that all about? So just like in a social setting, making it more of a normal discussion.
And just FYI, my boots I got this weekend at the thrift store for $1. Quite proud of myself on that one.
Yeah, now we do like, what are we wearing? Redesign of yarns, big one. On the microfibers in the water issue, it's more than just a filter issue. We have someone from the Ocean Protection Council. There's a huge amount of these fragments in stormwater, so that's kind of bigger than it may even seem. We kind of on the same vein, maybe a tax rebate for repair and reuse businesses. Always don't buy stuff you don't need. Education, going to be a huge part of this. Supporting clothing swaps, swap meets, flea markets, like huge ones in Santa Cruz, just getting a strong community of swapping. And then there's the renting clothes too, which is interesting.
Sure, go ahead.
If you are from the Sacramento area, on December 15th, Sunday, there's the Upcycle Pop. I don't know if you know about that, holiday market. Look it up, upcyclepop.com. It's all makers that make stuff from repurposed things. We are going to be there too, selling our products made from fire hose and banners and scrap leather, and as art installations and local artists and cake and coffee and all the good stuff. So check it out.
Go ahead and Google the Upcycle Pop. Yeah, I've been to so many of these people's events. It is so much fun, and there's a lot of really creative people there that are selling things that are made from upcycled stuff and stuff that would normally be thrown away. So, all right, Robert, go ahead.
Great. So some things we thought of, I want to highlight clothing rental, especially for items that you're just going to use a couple times, like high-end clothing. I don't think anyone touched on how the 100,000 pounds that are created on Halloween, just on synthetic textiles for things you're going to use one night. And so again, renting those. And then again, how to make repair and reuse sexy, or some type of awareness campaign on the benefits of how, the environmental benefits of just wearing your clothing longer, or buying one article of clothing at a thrift shop a year, things like that. Popularize repair, cafe, big brands. Yeah.
So a lot of these repair or reuse ideas are not sexy and they're not popular. And it's those hippie people that go and do those things, right? All of us in this room. But if we can start creating a campaign on social media with big brands, with Hollywood elite to make these ideas sexy, then it becomes sort of a competition among social worlds. And then the other ideas, I love repair cafes, and I think many of us here do as well, but you know, they're popular, but a lot of people don't know about them. So if we can, you know, kind of integrate with big brands and do pop-up repair cafes at big brand locations like the H&Ms of the world to get people into that concept that would have never heard of it before or never attended, might be a good idea.
And also, I'll just plug in and on this whole awareness campaign thing. I don't know how many of y'all have watched on Netflix, Hassan Minaj's show, The Patriot Act, just did an episode on fast fashion. And so he goes way down deep into the issue. And I guess for your everyday viewer, that's a good thing to go out and share with your circles.
I just wanted to mention, I got here late, but 11 o'clock on NPR was the takeaway, was all about fast fashion and environment, but I didn't hear it because I ran into the room here. But it probably is on KQED on the archive takeaway.
Awesome. Great job, everybody. I really appreciate all of your thoughtful and insightful inputs and opinions and ideas. And so what we're going to do with this information is we are going to collect it all and use this to kind of help us going forward. So don't think that this was a futile thing where we just wanted to keep you trapped here just a little bit longer. No, we're really going to actually use this information going forward. So we really appreciate you sticking around. I know it's late, I know traffic and everything else, but you know, there's a lot of great restaurants with happy hour. So, you know, beat that traffic. So thank you again for staying. We really appreciate it. I think Tracy has some final words, so I'll go ahead and pass it off on to her.
Well, thank you again, everyone, for coming to the workshop. This was our first effort, and I hope it's not our last. It sounds like from what I've heard from folks that they found it a really productive, useful time today. We appreciate you taking all that energy and input into what we're going to be using to kind of help create a roadmap. The other thing is if you go back to where you came from and you have any extra or additional thoughts about the day, how it went, or anything that we missed or whatever, please, I think this is a beginning of a long-term relationship. So please, I know my name was listed as a contact. Please go ahead and feel free to contact me at any time. Just give me an email, and I would be really welcoming any sort of input and on feedback, and especially what you want to see going forward. If you want to see doing something like this again, and just whatever your thoughts are when you got back, it would be really great to hear back. So thank you all. Safe travels.
if you guys haven't signed in on the sign-in sheet, could you please go ahead and do so on the back table? Thank you.